Hey Mizzou fans, what's up? We got a lot to talk about. My name is Josh Fan from ShowMeFootball.com, and since the last time I made a video, Mizzou football played a bowl game, and they hired an offensive coordinator. I wanted to make a video talking about the bowl game and my thoughts after that. I just never got around to it, being home for the holidays and everything. It just was something that took a backseat for me. And then Missouri hired an offensive coordinator today, and I'd really like to talk about that offensive coordinator hire. So I decided I would just talk about both today, and that OC hire just kind of inspired me to finally make a video about Mizzou, since I had been putting it off for a little bit. But I have some free time. I wanted to talk Mizzou football, give you guys my thoughts, and just kind of talk about the state of the program right now. So let's talk about the bowl game first, because that's not going to take me very long, and I'm not going to analyze the game and talk about how many passing yards Brady Cook had or how many rushing yards Mizzou held Wake Forest to, because that's not stuff that ultimately matters. What matters is how fans feel about the program after the bowl game heading into next year, because the bowl game, you guys know how I feel about bowl games, okay? I really don't think they mean that much. And I even tweeted before the bowl game, I said, people are going to lose sight of the fact. People always talk about how they don't care about bowl games and how bowl games don't matter, and I agree. And then they lose sight of that when the bowl game actually starts, and since it is their favorite team playing, they get all riled up and they want to win once the game actually comes on, and then all of a sudden the game that they said doesn't matter matters. And I'm just always someone that has felt like the bowl games do not matter. Anything that's not an NY6 bowl or a college football playoff game, the bowls just don't mean that much anymore. And we've seen that as players and coaches tend to move around after the last game of the season before the bowl game just doesn't mean that much to them. And you always have opt-outs and transfers and stuff like that. I mean, Mizzou was down a number of significant players in this game. It was not their team from the regular season, and that's why I don't think the bowl game is a fair evaluation, because it doesn't reflect the regular season at all. I mean, even last year when Mizzou lost to Army in the Armed Forces Bowl, Tyler Beatty didn't play in that game, and Tyler Beatty was pretty much the sole reason they were even in a bowl game in the first place. This year, I think a lot of credit goes to the Mizzou defense, and this Mizzou defense that played in this Wake Forest bowl game was just not the same defense. There was no Isaiah McGuire, there was no DJ Coleman. The defense looked a lot different. The pass rush was not getting home in that game. And I think really my main thoughts after the bowl game are the same issues that always persisted with this team all year long were also present in the bowl game, and it's not a huge shock. My biggest takeaways from the bowl game: one, Drink needs an offensive coordinator, which he got one, and we're going to talk about that. Two, Brady Cook is not the guy. I know Brady Cook improved down the stretch of the season, and people were optimistic about him. But I think the bowl game showed that the whole Brady Cook improved thing was kind of overstated. I think for the most part, Brady Cook is still the same guy. I think the biggest difference between the way he played most of this past season and the last few games was that he started running the ball a little bit more. And maybe you credit Bush Hamden, who has since left for the Boise State offensive coordinator job. He was reported to be collaborating with Drink on calling offensive plays, and we saw Brady Cook run a little bit more. We saw a little bit more difference in the offense after he supposedly started calling plays, and that was nice and everything, but the Missouri offense still only averaged, another 1 or 2 points per game, even after the supposed change in play calling duties. So I don't think Brady Cook is the guy. I think we saw a lot of mistakes in that game. Missing wide open players, wide open receivers, missing 5-yard outs just that weren't even close, passes that should be completed. And I understand that the offensive line isn't great and the wide receivers aren't exactly elite, but I'm seeing a quarterback that is struggling to make the simplest throws. And I understand that Brady Cook had a torn labrum surgery after the season concluded, which that makes things a little bit more interesting, but I still don't know how that explains how Brady Cook is able to hit a dot to Dominic Lovett one play and then miss a 5-yard slant the next play. I feel for Brady Cook, because if he was playing injured, that he shouldn't have been put in that position. This is now the second straight year in which Drinkwitz played an injured quarterback because he just absolutely thought the guy behind him wasn't good enough, and that's a concern. I think you still need to bring in a transfer quarterback this offseason. Mizzou hasn't really shown a lot of reported interest in anybody, so that's kind of strange. Maybe they're waiting for an offensive coordinator, and now that they have an offensive coordinator in the fold, they'll pursue a quarterback a little more. I don't know. I definitely think they should, though, because if Brady Cook is going to be missing all of spring ball, then you're going through spring ball with essentially one QB who is capable, or that we think is capable, on Sam Horn, and he has barely played at all. So I think you have to bring in a transfer just out of necessity. And I don't mean just a Jack Abraham type that you bring in just to fill the spot that is never really going to do anything or that you don't trust. I'm talking about someone that competed for a job at another Power 5 school or has been a starter at another Power 5 school. I think that's what you need to be bringing in. And part of me feels like that since Brady Cook supposedly played injured and had that torn labrum, that this is going to give him another shot at starter. And I feel for Brady Cook. Again, I hope he gets better and he does well, whether it's at Mizzou or somewhere else. I still don't believe that the torn labrum was the only thing holding him back. I just don't think he's a very good quarterback, and that's just my personal opinion. I think that if Mizzou was at full strength for the bowl game, if they had their same team from the regular season, they have a much better chance of winning, and they probably do win. But I think also that we saw most of the issues that were present during the regular season. A defense that is very good, if not elite, when it's at full strength, that carried the team for most of the game until the offense just kept putting them back on the field without scoring points to the point where they just broke because they couldn't hold it anymore. And Mizzou's offense wasn't good enough to win that game. That was the case for most of the regular season. A defense that is very good and doesn't deserve the offense that it's playing for. And I know after that game, a lot of people were coming to conclusions and saying, oh, you know what, Drink is on the hot seat. And look, Drink might be on the hot seat next year, or seat might be getting a little warm. Yeah, he has to win next year. Like, next year can't be another 6-6 season. It has to be 7 wins at the very minimum. Some people still might not be happy with 7 wins, but in my opinion, you can't fire a coach at Mizzou for going 7-5. That's just, Mizzou wouldn't be an attractive job if you fire a coach for going 7-5. And technically, that would be a step forward for Eli Drinkwitz. Maybe not the step forward that fans want to see to this point, but you at least need to win 7 games next year, in my opinion. But let's just indulge and pretend that Drink is on the hot seat for next year. If that's the truth, this bowl game is not why. Drink is not going to be on the hot seat because of a bowl game, a 6-6 bowl game at that, okay? A bowl game in this day and age is not something that you evaluate a coach's tenure on, a coach's future on. Because the bowl games just really don't matter, and some people might not like hearing that. They value bowl games a little bit more. They still put stock into bowl games. I don't. I just don't think they mean very much. I think if you look across the nation and other good teams that have really crapped the bed in their bowl games, it's pretty easy to see that these other teams, they just don't care. Like Florida got absolutely blown out by Oregon State. I think a Florida team at full strength with Anthony Richardson makes that game a lot closer. You just can't take these bowl games at face value. And also, Wake Forest was a pretty good team this year, and Sam Hartman, their quarterback, he was one of the better quarterbacks in the nation last year. So it's not like Mizzou went out there and lost to some group of 5 school. I mean, Wake Forest was solid this year. They went 7-5. They had some good wins. They had Sam Hartman, like I said, one of the better quarterbacks in the nation, who has since transferred to Notre Dame. So the bowl game is whatever to me. I didn't really expect Mizzou to win. A lot of young guys got their first action ever in that game. It's just not a game to me that should be used to evaluate the coaching job that's being done. If they had won the bowl game, nice, awesome, cool. If not, it's really not a big deal. But with all that being said, yes, next year has to be better for Drink and Company, and for next year to be better, this offense has to improve. The defense has a lot of returning talent next year. Tyron Hopper's probably coming back. We've already heard Trajan Jeffcoat is coming back. Darius Robinson's back for another year. KAD and Rakeshaw are both back. Jalen Carlise is back. So a defense that was very good last year returns a lot of its starters, which is very good. And they've already added through the transfer portal a little bit. They had the Northwestern transfer defensive end who looks like a solid addition. So this defense looks to be pretty good again next year. The offense, if we can just get the offense to have a pulse, this team could win some games. And a good start in making this offense better is going out and getting an offensive coordinator, which is exactly what Mizzou and Eli Drinkwitz did today. And for a while, I questioned whether or not Eli Drinkwitz was going to hire an offensive coordinator because Bush Hamdan, who apparently was helping to call plays late this season, left for Boise State for the offensive coordinator position. And when he did that, it made me think that, he wasn't accepted for the offensive coordinator job here. So that was kind of strange because him and Drink seemed to have a good relationship, and the offense seemed to improve a little bit under Hamdan. So naming him offensive coordinator just seemed like the right move. And then he left for the same position at another school. So I was like, is Drink really going to hire an offensive coordinator? Did he tell Bush Hamdan, no, I'm not hiring an OC? So he went to go be the OC somewhere else. And also just based on how I think of Drinkwitz, he didn't really seem like a guy that was going to hire an offensive coordinator. He mentioned it as a possibility in a press conference during the season that, yeah, maybe I need to hire an OC, but I didn't know if he was actually going to do it or not. And prior to his hire today, I was like, look, if they're going to hire an OC, they need to do it, at some point here, because it was getting a little bit later, and most coaching hires are kind of done around this time. You guys know I love Drink. I've been a big Drink guy. I'm a big Drink defender. But I can admit, I think Drink does have a little bit of an ego, and I thought maybe that was something that would keep him from hiring an offensive coordinator because he just trusts himself so much to fix this thing on his own. But nope, today Mizzou hired an offensive coordinator. They are bringing in Fresno State offensive coordinator Kirby Moore. Kirby Moore is the younger brother of Dallas Cowboys of the NFL OC Kellen Moore. And he led Fresno State to a Mountain West championship this past season. They had one of the more exciting offenses in the nation last year. Fresno State was 10-4, and they led the Mountain West in total yards per game with 402, and also points. They scored 30.6 points per game and finished second in passing yards per game with 270.6 passing yards per game. They also finished the season with a 29-6 win over Washington State in the LA Bowl. So they finished off the season pretty strong after starting off 1-4. Something that I was able to find out about more just doing my research on him is that he started at Fresno State as the passing game coordinator and worked primarily with the wide receivers. Moore himself was actually a wide receiver in college, so he knows the position very well and knows how to coach that position. And the wide receivers at Fresno State took a massive step forward under him, and that's something that I really like because he made it a point to get his talented wide receivers the ball at Fresno State. And coming over to Mizzou, where we have Luther Burden, who's looking to have a big year next year with Dominic Lovett's departure, and Oklahoma transfer Theo Weiss, Mizzou definitely needs to look to utilize both of them next year. And I think Moore is a guy that will definitely look to do that. And he knows the position very well, of course. Also found an interesting tidbit from Rock M Nation. They published an article shortly after the hire was made, and they added that while Moore says goodbye, this is from 24/7 Sports as well. They just cited this in their article. They said, while Moore says goodbye to two of his top three receivers from 2018's Mountain West title team, he was also ranked as the number one recruiter in the Mountain West in the 2019 recruiting cycle, according to the 24/7 Sports recruiter rankings. In this same article from Rock M Nation by Josh Matica, it states that Moore has been referred to as a rising star in the college football coaching ranks over the past several years. He made 24/7's 30 under 30 list 2 years in a row due to his prowess as a recruiter and in helping Fresno State's passing attack. And that's another thing that I really like about this Kirby Moore hire is that he's very young. He's much like Drinkwitz when Mizzou hired him to be their head coach. He's very young. He hasn't been a coach for too long, but in the short time that he's been coaching, he's been very impressive. And he seems to be young, relatable, a very good recruiter because of it, and someone that just really knows today's game well. Someone that's probably pretty easy to play for if you're a player coming out of high school or a highly rated kid coming out of high school. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on Fresno State's offense. I didn't watch a ton of Fresno State football last year. I didn't even watch their bowl game, if I'm being quite honest. But on the surface, after doing some research, looking at the numbers, this seems to be a pretty good hire, a pretty promising hire. Based on Fresno State's offensive numbers, especially in the passing game, this is a good fit as well. Missouri definitely needed to improve its passing game for next season and the utilization of wide receivers. I mean, Fresno State, they ranked 53rd in offense nationally last year, and that's out of everyone in the nation. Being that it was Fresno State from the Mountain West Conference, that's a pretty good spot to be, and they ranked 27th in all the nation in passing yards. So this is a good hire. This is a good fit, in my opinion. When you just scratch the surface, it's a move that Mizzou needed to make. Eli Drinkwitz needed to hire an offensive coordinator. Next year really needs to be a winning season, and he could really help himself by taking some of the responsibility off his plate when it comes to play calling duties. I think people got tired of seeing Drink call plays, and look, I am a big supporter of Drink, as I've said many times before, and I think he's a better play caller than people give him credit for. I just think it's really hard to call plays when you have an incapable quarterback, an incompetent offensive line, and bringing in Moore also probably helps, bringing in another guy that can go out and recruit and convince offensive linemen and quarterbacks potentially in the portal to come and play for Mizzou, because now you have an offensive coordinator, you have an offensive system to sell to people. I don't think Drinkwitz's offensive system was something that you could really sell to kids that you're recruiting right now. Now that you've brought in an OC that has a little bit of a track record and seems to have some promising traits, you can sell that to kids. You can be like, look, we have an offense that is looking for capable offensive linemen. You need to be calling every single starting offensive lineman from the Power 5 that hits the portal, in my opinion. And if Mizzou does ultimately end up targeting a transfer quarterback, I think Kirby Moore is definitely someone that quarterbacks would look forward to working with. I mean, Jake Haener, the quarterback from Fresno State, he had a very good year at Fresno State this past season. He had a 158.3 QBR on the season. So there's a lot to like about this hire, but those are my thoughts. Just wanted to make a video for you guys talking about, my thoughts after the bowl game, the state of the program, and now this offensive coordinator hire. I think this was a really good hire by Drink. One more time, it was a move that needed to happen because I'm a big Drink guy, but Drink has to win next year. Bringing in an offensive coordinator helps with elevating this offense for next year. So those are my thoughts, but I would love to hear from you guys. What do you think of Mizzou's offensive coordinator hire? What are your thoughts about the state of the program right now? Let me know down in the comments. I would love to hear from you guys, but make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Mizzou fans can find this, and make sure you check out my work on showmefootball.com, and I will see you all in the next one. MIZ.